Good afternoon, it's Gary Sly and the Legacy of Handmade Objects. Hanging out here in the front room today after running around all day on a Monday and getting some errands done. I've been on a little side trip lately in terms of stitching, learning some new techniques, and after having learned how to do turkey work, I was of course curious about where it comes from and what the origins of the name are and all that sort of stuff. I'm not so sure I have all the answers, but I was able to do a little research, and also I want to at the end show you a little bit about the embroidery stitch called turkey work and how it might be used in some of the applications that you have. You saw a picture at the beginning today of some cattails that I've been working on as part of a large crewel piece that I'm doing as a commission. The cattails have various white and browns that are fuzzy, which is what happens, when the cattails go to seed and they begin to sprout out those little fibers. Turkey work has two aspects to it that I want to talk about a little bit. And just kind of suggest what I know about the history of it. And then, like I said, I'll switch the camera around, put the lights up high, and see if I can show you a little bit about how we do turkey work. First, as I said, there are two applications of turkey work. There is the older application of it, which is actually a weaving technique. If you are a weaver, you know that when you get ready to take a piece off of the loom, you often have bunches of little pieces of yarn and threads of various lengths that we call thrums, T-H-R-U-M. And the thrums, for a modern weaver, are probably something we just throw over in a corner and maybe don't do anything with. But as you can imagine, back in the day when every piece of yarn and every piece of thread was hand spun, and all the work that would have gone into that, there would have been a great deal of interest in trying to find a way to use those thrums. So turkey work started out as a way of creating textiles using warp and weft from a weaving standpoint. And the word turkey is not the little bird that flies around and makes gobbly noises, but it's the idea that these carpets looked a little bit like Turkish carpets. So they were twisted and knotted, and the piles were cut in such a way that you could have all kinds of wonderful designs. And they're not as fine and certainly not as well made as Turkish carpets are, but the technique was one that allowed for a fairly inexpensive covering using the woven technique. When I was in India in 2020, I saw them doing some of the knotting pile carpet techniques there, which take hours and hours and hours to do and are really quite fine. Of course, good turkey work, as far as it was done from the 15th to the 18th century in England, would have been quite a nice look and feel as well. So professional weavers would take the thrums that were left over. They would have a warp, which are the front and back threads on a loom, and they would use the thrums to tie knots and create ends that would stick up, which would create a pile. And they were knotted, and so they were done row by row. I'm not going to attempt to show you how to do that. If you want to look up turkey work from a standpoint of weaving, you're welcome to do that. I was just fascinated to know that there were two aspects of this, and that the turkey work embroidery that I'm doing is not the same as the original turkey work that we saw developed in England. In fact, sometimes it was called Norwich work, Norwich, because that's one of the areas where the production of turkey work textiles was most prominent. The earliest indication of turkey work used as a textile was in 1553 in Windsor, and on up into the early part of the 18th century, You saw chair cushions. They also would have made cushions to go across the top of hutches, tables, almost like table runners, but protective and decorative pieces that might have been used in various places. They would have been good places to put hot dishes and things like that, and they might have protected the fine woodwork that was underneath it. They were also especially good for chair covers because they were a little bit less expensive than the Turkish kind of designs that would have come from the Middle East. They lasted a long time, and so we see indications of them being used even in some of the royal palaces like Whitehall and where's the other one I was seeing? Whitehall, oh well, I guess it doesn't matter. Oh well, Whitehall and Holyrood Palace had turkey work designs done. In 1698, you began to see people starting to use cane as a piece of as a material to use for chairs and coverings, and that's when you begin to see turkey work go out of fashion. As always happens when new technology comes along, the folks who were doing the weaving resented this new cane idea, and so there was a petition to the King of England that caning be outlawed so that those who made turkey work cushions could continue to make their work. And it's argued that in 1698, 5,000 dozen chairs were done for various homes and places in England, which would be quite a good output if you're talking about handmade work. So if you want to snoop around a little bit more in terms of the weaving aspect of turkey work, you might go on and Google and look at some of the chairs, some of the upholstery, some of the coverings that were made. And again, it's simply taking those little short threads that are wools for the most part that are at the end of the weaving technique that are leftovers when you cut them off the loom, and making use of those to create kind of a thick pile that you might use to cover things. So that's where the idea comes from, and then borrowing from that is a whole embroidery technique called turkey work, which is what I got interested in last week when I started doing it on my crewel piece. Turkey work is, again, a pile kind of an effect, and I'll show you. It's a series of loops where you would either cut the loop to make it stand up and look like something like fur or feathers or something like that, or you would leave the loops in place depending on what kind of designs you're trying to create. They would be used for flower centers, for petals, for botanical elements like the cattails that you see in the picture that I was working on. They could also replicate garments, furry garments, even human hair in an embroidered piece, or they could be put in the background and used as clouds or flowers in a meadow or something like that. You'll also see turkey work entering into stump work and Brazilian embroidery if you've been exposed to either of those traditions along the way. So I'm going to describe it just briefly, then I'll click over and see how I can do in terms of creating a video of the same effect. I'm going to use needlework canvas because I think it'll be easier for you to see the holes and kind of see what I'm working on. But basically you start out, ground your thread or wool in the back, however way you want to do that. Make a little loop that stands up over the surface of your piece. Take your finger and hold that in place, and then make another loop going through the same holes that ties it into place. So then you have a loop standing up above the surface of your fabric, and like I said, you can either take a pair of scissors and clip that, or you can leave it as a loop depending on what kind of design you want to make for your fabric. And that's the effect that I used to create that fuzzy part of the the cattails that you see in the picture that I gave you. So I'm going to move out of the camera lens now and go over to where I have my light set up, and I'm going to attempt to show you the technique of turkey work. Okay, so hopefully you can see what's going on here. If you see my canvas, you see I've already done a couple loops and I've clipped the edges of the yarn to kind of make that fuzzy effect. So moving from right to left, I'm going to bring my needle up through the canvas, and then I'm going to go over one, or probably I'll go over two holes using the needlepoint canvas. Draw it through and stop just short of the end so that I make a little loop just like that. Now what I like to do is take my left hand, since I'm right-handed, pull the loop back and hold it, and that also helps me to be able to see the holes. Then I'm going to bring my needle up and down in the exact same two holes as I did to make the loop, but in this case I'm going to pull it tight, and it's going to be an anchor stitch for that first. And there's my loop, and then if I take a pair of scissors, I can clip that loop, and as I build on that and create a whole area like that, I can create sort of a fuzzy effect. Now I find it's good to continue to hold that piece down when I head to the next row. So I'm going to do the similar thing here. I'm going to go up, down a little bit to the side of that, create a little loop with my yarn. Try to make your loops similar in size, but remember you can also trim them at the end, so you don't have to worry about it too much. Pull that loop down, bring my needle up through and down the other side in the same holes that I used for the loop. Anchor the loop in place. Now, as I said, you could also leave that loop just as it is if you want a series of loops, but for the kind of work that I was doing with the cattail, I clipped the loops so you could see sort of a fuzzy effect. And if I wanted to, I could shorten that pile so it wouldn't be as high. Just really depends on what kind of effect I'm trying to make. I use this bright red-orange yarn because I think it would be easier for you to see. So there's a couple of examples of the turkey work stitch. Okay, I'm back to finish up our discussion. I guess one of the things I was thinking about when I was deciding what to talk about today was just kind of the toolbox that we as stitchers use in order to create images. Some of us don't like going too far outside of whatever directions are given us for a particular project, but I know some of you are always interested in some new ideas and stretching your abilities. So think about turkey work, even though I almost never see it on any kind of piece that I've been given to do in recent times. Think of turkey work as one of those things that you can use to embellish or bring a special effect to some piece that you're working on. I could see you using turkey work on cross-stitch pieces or surface embroidery pieces. And the other fun thing I was thinking about, you could also use it to create kind of a carpet effect, similar to things like latch hook and rug hooking. You could do your turkey work stitches following a pattern or using some kind of an abstract design with various colors and some kind of dark or ground color for the background, and really create pictures that way that have a three-dimensional effect to them. And as I mentioned when I was working on it, you can cut your pile to different heights. So you can have really some dimension and some three-dimensional kind of aspect to your work if you want to think about it that way. There's some cool videos of people who know how to show you how to do this way better than I do. But I just thought the history of turkey work and some of the techniques and such are really kind of fun for weavers to learn about, and also for those of us who love to do embroidery. And maybe sometime we'll do an exploration about those really complex and wonderful Turkish and Persian and Middle Eastern designs of rugs and weaving that is so important in the history of textiles all around the world. So that's it for today, a little turkey work here and there. Hope you're having a good week. As always, this is Gary Sly and the Legacy of Handmade Objects.